An ABC investigation has uncovered data suggesting the Victorian Government's logging agency has been conducting widespread and systemic illegal logging that puts the state's water supplies at risk, and that the regulator has been turning a blind eye. National Environment reporter Michael Slezak joins us now from Sydney. Michael, we've touched on this issue before. What are the laws that are allegedly being broken, and how does your story today take forward the work that you've done on this already?
Yeah, so in Victoria, like in most states, water supply protection areas are protected under a raft of different laws. In particular, they're protected from the actions of the timber industry under the Code of Practice for Timber Production. And so basically that law has a limit to where you're allowed to log in water protection areas and how steep the slopes are that you're allowed to log on. The concern there is that if logging is done on very steep slopes in areas that provide our drinking water and the water for farmers and other uses, that when the trees are taken off the slopes, the soil is then able to erode and flow into the streams, into the rivers, and then into the dams and contaminate the water that we use. So there are very strict laws. The laws have had a complete ban on logging in those zones, in some of those zones, over 30 degrees slope. And now the reporting that I've been doing for some time has raised allegations suggesting that the logging has actually been breaching those limits. So previously, the allegations that I've reported on have been, some of the responses to those have suggested that the data that the allegations have relied on hasn't quite been accurate enough. So with the reporting that we've done today, we've obtained the very data used by Vic Forests, the logging company in Victoria that's owned by the state government there. It's used by them to plan their logging. It's this incredibly detailed data set that maps the height of every point in the forest to 1 metre elevation, to 1 metre resolution. So at every 1 metre point across the catchment, it tells you how high it is. And so then you can calculate the slopes. And so two academics at the Australian National University, Professor David Lindenmayer and Dr. Chris Taylor, took this data as well and completed a very thorough analysis of it. And they found that across two catchments, the Thomson catchment, which provides 60% of the stored drinking water for Melbourne, about 321 hectares of land appears to have been logged above that slope limit. Now it's hard to imagine what 320 hectares is. It's about 150 or more than 150 MCGs worth of land that has apparently been logged over that limit. It adds up to the majority of areas that have been logged in those areas. It does include, however, it's important to say, very small, because the data is such high resolution, it can include very small breaches of up to just 1 metre squared. So you can imagine that could be, for instance, just like a boulder in the catchment. And so to smooth out over larger areas to make sure that they're not just including very tiny little breaches, the academics did another analysis where they averaged out slopes over about 20. They did two analyses, one over a 20 and one over a 40 metre circles with a 40 metre diameter. And when they did that analysis, they still found 66 hectares had been cleared across the two catchments. So that's kind of where the story is at now. We've also obtained FOI data from the regulator, which has suggested that the regulator itself, although it had dismissed the allegations of widespread breaches here, it had actually done a desktop analysis using similar data and come to a very similar conclusion. But it still rejected the allegations of widespread breaches.
And we've just been taking a look at some of the very detailed work that's been presented on your online piece today with the graphics included as part of that. And what's been the response to all of this, Michael?
Yeah, so look, Vic Forests, the company that does this logging that's owned by the Victorian government, denies that it's committed widespread breaches. It has been found by the regulator to have breached this law in a couple of instances, but it points out that the regulator, and they're correct, the regulator has assessed this claim of widespread breaches and rejected it. The reporting that we've got has some questions about why the regulator did reject those allegations. The regulator insists that it's an effective regulator and that it assesses all complaints of illegal logging. Now, the Victorian government's response is a little bit complex. It's moved just earlier this month to actually weaken the very law that's been alleged to have been broken under this. They've weakened it so that in any logging area, Vic Forests is within these catchments. Vic Forest is allowed to now log up to 10% of that area beyond the slope limit. However, many of the areas that we're looking at in this story, the allegations are that they've breached the law by much more than that 10%. In some cases, nearly 30% of coops have been logged beyond the limit. So that change in the law doesn't remove these allegations. The minister, in response to the questions that I put to her for this, Lily D'Ambrosio, the Environment Minister in Victoria, argues that the change to the law was merely clarifying the law, that it doesn't change it in a substantial way, and she says that she takes allegations of non-compliance very seriously.
Okay, National Environment reporter Michael Slezak there, and you can see a lot of detail in his piece online at abc.net.au/news.